You're listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast, a discussion with engaging, empowering, and enlightening leaders about the greatest competitive advantage in business and entrepreneurship that often goes unrecognized: a team's energy. Here's your host, the woman who puts the energy in synergy, Karen R. Jenkins.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Synergy Leadership Podcast. I am so excited to have one of my favorite people and favorite colleagues on with us, Bob Morgan, who is the president and CEO of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Bob has come to this role, I think it was since April of 2021, and has been a trailblazer in this role since his arrival. He has not let anything grow up under his feet since he's joined our community. So without belaboring it, Bob, just come in and introduce yourself to our community. Tell them a little bit about your background, where you came from, and then we'll jump into some of the synergy leadership conversation that you and I discussed.
Well, Karen, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and to visit. I met you almost upon arrival back in April of 2021, and it's been one of the great treats of the last 2 years is to be able to work with you, and we're going to talk more about that here today. I have spent most of my life, both growing up as well as professionally, in Charlotte. Joined the staff of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce in 1991. Was on staff for 11 years, went across the river to the Gaston Chamber of Commerce as CEO for 3 years, and then returned to the Charlotte Chamber as the CEO for the next 13 years. And so I'm not exactly a Charlotte native. I was 6 when we moved there, but close enough to it, and a chamber professional who, given the opportunity to come and help the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce as someone with experience running a membership-based organization, as someone who did not have, frankly, a lot of baggage or scar tissue with the leadership in the State House, where we spend a lot of our time, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, here today, but also offered a familiarity of South Carolina that when you grow up and work in Charlotte, you're 10 miles from the state line, you're vacationing in Myrtle Beach as a child, you're camping on the Yorktown as a Boy Scout, you're vacationing, you're playing golf, if that's your thing. You're part of the same Carolinas Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, a professional association that, again, enabled me to step into the role with relationships with chamber leaders throughout the state. And there's just a whole lot of business and economy that takes place between Charlotte and and South Carolina that has been helpful to me in this role. So I am married 32 years shortly to my wife, Meg. We are the proud parents of 2 sons. Robert, our oldest, just finished his first year of law school. Our second, Jack, graduates in 2 days and will be taking a job working in the supply chain industry in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. So Jack's another North Carolinian moving south across the border, and we're really excited about that.
Excellent. And it doesn't hurt that Meg is alumni of USC, right?
Well, I've been told I might not have gotten the job, but the fact that the Tar Heel married a Gamecock 32 years ago. So yes.
That is awesome. And again, thank you for spending time with us today. You know, I'm really impressed with your background and just the experience that you bring to this community. I won't even say to the position, because your impact and your network reaches and so many people. When you look at your arrival here in Columbia, tell us a little bit about your history, your experience, and how that prepared you to take on the role that you have now.
Well, Karen, you think of April 2021, we thought we were starting to come out of the pandemic, and I don't know that anybody was prepared for what that meant with what we had been through the previous year or so in dealing with the pandemic. And in fact, it did stick with us a little bit longer. And although we're it's behind us now, hopefully. But again, I think it's that experience of having been a part of and led a large membership-based organization, the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, 501c6 nonprofit membership-based organization. The South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, same thing, just on a larger scale, the scale being instead of just one city and region, being the entire state. And so just knowing that, there are reasons that companies will join and what it takes to get them engaged and involved and the value that you offer in return. One of the things that not everybody understands about a Chamber of Commerce is that very few chambers of commerce enjoy any public funding. There are some who do, but in our case, every nickel that we spend, we have to raise. And there's no requirement that companies join their Chamber of Commerce. So you have to be very clear in knowing what is your vision, what is your mission, what is the value that you're going to offer back to any business person as to why they should write a check to invest in your organization and why a year later they should renew that investment. And so again, with that more than 20 years of experience with both the Charlotte Chamber, and I should add that I found my experience the 3 years that I was at the Gaston Chamber of Commerce, while Charlotte was large, 40 plus people on staff, everybody had a specialty, and it was a well-run machine. The Gaston Chamber, there were 6 before I got there. I was the 7th, and we had to be very entrepreneurial with limited resources, and put a lot of balls up in the air and keep them and juggle them, and do a little bit of everything. And I like to tell the story that when I started at the Gaston Chamber and I got my business card, it said president and CEO, I had the title. Wasn't that wonderful? One of the women in the office on Tuesday night pulled me aside and said, "Bob, it's Tuesday night. This is the night that you roll the trash out to the curb." And she wasn't kidding. And that was just part of the job. And so when I came here, it really felt like a blend between the two. We were larger than the Gaston Chamber, but smaller than the Charlotte Chamber. We had come through the pandemic, and so there had been a lot of inactivity or a lot of things that had been put on hold or not held in person that we had to get back up and running. And of course, that started with the people. We have grown the organization from when I started in April of 21. We had nine of us. We now, when we're fully staffed, we're at 16. So we've not quite doubled, but we have added significant capacity, and we've been able to come back to the office, been able to come back in person, meeting with our members around the state at the various events and activities that we do.
So let's talk about the chamber. The chamber, or South Carolina Chamber to be exact, is the leading voice for business in South Carolina. From your experience, and then of course, the background that you have, talk to our audience about the benefits of being a part of the state chamber. Why would somebody want to join? I know we've had this conversation and I was very enlightened by what you shared, but I think the audience needs to hear about that because there's so many benefits that people don't know as far as what they could gain from not just joining, because one of my thing is not just joining an organization, but also pouring into that organization as well. So share with us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, and I think it starts with the vision and mission. First of all, let me say very few people really know and understand what any Chamber of Commerce does. Every town of every size has a chamber. We all, I like to call it, we're made up of the civic DNA of the communities or the states that we serve. So we are all different, and that creates confusion. I like to cut through that confusion. Let's start with our vision. We're a group of businesses and business leaders who want for South Carolina's economy to be the most vibrant in the United States, creating opportunity and prosperity for all. We do that through the fulfillment of our mission. You just said it. It is to be the leading voice for all businesses in South Carolina. And we do that through the promotion of free enterprise. We do it by defining and advocating at the State House for a pro-business agenda. We do it by partnering with others in the business community, local chambers of commerce, other allies around specific issues. And finally, we do it by convening the business community, most often around the issues that we're dealing with at at the State House. And so if I'm trying to sell you why you should join this organization, you need to start with that vision. You need to start with that mission. And if you can buy into that, then we're off and running with the conversation. I would then follow with a conversation about a strategic plan that you and our board of directors adopted just last month, a strategic plan that is a 7-year blueprint or a vision of what we would like to see happen in South Carolina between now and 2030. I don't have all of the metrics in front of me, but we have 3 broad organizational goals. One is economic competitiveness, the other is workforce development, and the other is quality of life. And we have specific metrics of we'd like to see South Carolina's ranking improve as it relates to household income, as it relates to the percentage of college students who, when they graduate, stay in state versus moving elsewhere. A whole host of big picture items that, by being a part of this Chamber of Commerce, companies can support all of our efforts to make South Carolina an even better place than it already is. Let's boil it down to the third step. We would talk about at least 2/3 of what we do is policy and the advocacy of policy, a pro-business agenda, primarily at the State House. And we can go deep on issues that have been dealt with in this year's legislative session where we've had an impact. We can go deep into issues that will carry over into 2024 that our lobbying team will be actively working on. In putting together that policy agenda, the defining of it and the advocacy, that's where any business person has an opportunity to be a voice at the table. We're not a huge organization. We have a limited budget. We're $3 million nonprofit organization. We're a staff of 16 when we're fully functional. We don't have a vote in the State House and the State Senate, but we have influence because we represent 800 companies, and there are businesses out there, whether they're members of the chamber or not, they're benefiting from the work we do, whether it's around tax policy, workforce development issues, tort reform, they are benefiting. And so to be a part of the voice that collectively defines what that business agenda is, and then goes to seek its approval, that's what's in it for companies. I would add a fourth, and I don't want to overplay this, but we're not a networking organization. For the most part, most local chambers are. They're closer to Main Street. They're closer to more smaller businesses typically. But networking is a part of what we do. And Karen, but for your membership in this Chamber of Commerce, I would not have been able to pick up the phone yesterday and give you a lead of a company that I met with last week, who's also a member of this chamber, who has some needs that maybe your company will be able to fill. And so connecting your business to other people who you're trying to do business with, putting you in the room with people who may be beneficial to your business, just being a part and being aware at a high level of what business leaders from around the state are talking about, of what's happening in the State House. There's value to any business leader to be engaged with us for those kinds of connections that we can offer.
And let me say thank you from the bottom of my heart and my team's heart for just you thinking of us at a point in time when you were having a conversation with one of the members to say, hey, look, let's connect the dots. That is powerful. One of the things that, we talked about at our event last week was, there's a saying that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And when you talk about being a part of the state chamber, having a seat at the table might be something as simple as being a member. It might be serving on a committee. It's just proximity to me is power. If you don't have proximity to something, you don't have access to it. Well, you do, but you don't. So as you said, had you and I not met, had I not served, had you not learned me and who I am and what we offer, I would not have been first of mind in a conversation that you had with another member. So you have access to people, organizations, and things that you would not have access to if you did not have a membership with the chamber. And to me, and I learned this the hard way, you don't join an organization and have your name on the roster. That does not work well. you join an organization and you get to work and you serve in some capacity. One of the things that I'm so impressed with you is that you came from Charlotte and came into one of the leading leadership roles in our state and have done it almost seamlessly. I could not tell watching you that you hadn't grown up here because of your contacts with the legislature, your contacts with other leaders in the business, contacts with other chambers. You know, our concept and one of our platform is synergy leadership. And synergy leadership to me is where you enhancing or engaging or harnessing your energy and the energy of others and being able to leverage that to accomplish common goals. And you're living that out loud based on the role that you have. So share with us about the leadership component of your role as the president and CEO of the South Carolina Chamber and the connections that you have to make and the people that you have to know, from the legislature to the business to the other local chambers to whoever else. So how, as a leader, have you harnessed that skill set to be able to what I call create synergy within our community?
Well, that's a great question. First, it starts with being very crystal clear about the vision and the mission of the organization. And, success for me, whether here or in previous jobs, is when I'm in conversations with other business leaders and they begin repeating back the vision and the mission of the organization. And some business guru has said, if you've repeated your mission 10 times today, you need to do it 10 times more than that, just to remind your fellow teammates and your investors and your partners. And so being crystal clear about that vision and mission, and being willing to go out and to preach it from the rooftops, right? And that's easy to do in a place like South Carolina because it's such a beautiful state and it's such good people. And one of the things that I have really enjoyed is getting out and about to meet the people where they are, in addition to the things we do right here in our state capital in Columbia. The other thing that has made it very easy for me is that the economy of the Carolinas is largely one. And while in my earlier career I was in economic development, and yes, there were times that we competed with South Carolina, we also used the Port of Charleston and claimed it as one of Charlotte's assets. More businesses in Western North Carolina use the Port of Charleston because it's closer and better than the ports in Wilmington or Morehead City. And so the economy doesn't stop at the state lines. I have numerous friends in Charlotte who have opened doors for me with people in South Carolina who've been important to my ability to get up and running more quickly than I might otherwise have. That network of knowing the local Chamber of Commerce executives through the Carolinas Association of Chamber of Commerce executives. And then in addition to those things, Karen, I bring a curiosity. If I'm going to live somewhere, I want to know the history. I want to know what makes it tick. I want to know who the players are. And the history of South Carolina is so rich, just so rich. I carry around in my car the book of historic markers from around the state and find myself stopping on the side of the road. There's just a rich history here of the role that South Carolina has played, and beginning with the creation of the United States with the American Revolution and all the history that happened here. We all know the history of the Civil War and the role that South Carolina played. And on the political stage in the most recent century, and now as we look ahead to a presidential election in 2024 with two candidates from South Carolina who are in the presidential race. It's just a fascinating place to be doing what I do as the face of the voice of the business community, working with all these great business leaders, working with our teammates here. And so it's just been a really good fit for all of those reasons.
When you look back at your history, you're a leader, right? You're a leader of people, either in your organization or within your community, what have you found to be your most successful strategies in successfully leading people? Because you've done it, not once, not twice, not at one place, not at a second place, but within multiple organizations. What would you say is your biggest success strategy for leading others?
I'm getting a little repetitive here, but just having a clear vision and mission for who we are and why we exist and what we do. Um, it's, you know, I'm not aware that anybody has ever accused me of being the smartest person in the room, but it's building a team of people who are smarter than I am, and who, with proper direction and vision and energy, can help make the organization better and help lead the organization forward. Um, I have an ability to think through the challenges of the political process, and I don't mean so much the partisan political process, but policy and strategy. And if you think about how in the world does any one organization speak for more than 800 businesses across South Carolina, there's a real um, distillation of a variety of voices that have to go into that, and perhaps have some ability to help figure that out, because it's a whole lot more art than it is science. And hopefully at the end of the day, we are focused on the right issues, and the right priorities. I also bring to any role that I play, and sometimes to a fault, I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm going to find the glass not half full, but 3/4 full and getting fuller. Sometimes that can be a detriment. I don't want to think that I have my head in the sand, but I think we are very fortunate to be in a place like South Carolina, where the economy is so strong and the potential is to make it even stronger. So fortunate to be a part of this state, and the good people that are here, and all of the great places that are here. And I'm just optimistic that by helping to define the business agenda and keep a focus on it from an advocacy perspective, that we can make this state an even better place. And I'll give you another example of my optimism, and maybe open up a can of worms. There are a lot of voices in the media right now and elsewhere who are scared of AI technology, and the potential for harm that it can cause now that it's being unleashed with us. I understand the concerns. I hear it, but I am completely optimistic that we are going to figure out how to put the curb rails on it to help keep it from doing the kind of damage that folks are speculating about. But I think it's going to be revolutionary in how it's going to change the way written communication is handled. There's the opportunity for it to make us as human beings much more efficient. There are opportunities for organizations to make themselves better versus their competition. I think AI and those who embrace it and figure that out are going to create competitive advantages for themselves. And I'm just an optimist by nature, and that's an example of where my optimism comes into play.
Well, I thoroughly agree with you on your assessment and all that it can do. Life is about change. There's three things that are guaranteed. You're born and you're going to pass away, but through that process, you're going to change. And I think AI gives us the opportunity to change at warp speed, but in a good way. And as you said, as long as we have, our processes in place and checks and balances, I think this is a great feat and a great opportunity for us as I won't even say as a country, I'm just going to say as a world.
Right. As people.
As a people, to do great things. So, a couple of questions before we close out, Bob. If you had to go back and look at everything that you've done in your role as a leader on this leadership journey, what are you most proud of?
Wow. I've had an opportunity to touch and to be at the table around a lot of big picture things. The recruitment of companies, the recruitment of professional sports, leading a campaign to get a half-cent sales tax passed for transit in Charlotte, that here 15 or 20 years later, the results are just astounding. The kind of positive development that has happened is pretty remarkable. So just just to be able to look around and see things where we've had an impact as an organization, and that I've been able to play a role in putting the right people on the field and working with the right folks, whether it's in a leading role or a complementary role. That's pretty rewarding. I'm from a scouting family, and the old adage, leave your campsite better than you found it. I look at some of the places that I've worked, and we've been able to do that. At this stage in my life, I will tell you that I mentioned that we have grown the staff here significantly, and I am part of hiring some folks who aren't that much older than my own children. And we have a good mix on our team of folks who have experience, as well as those who are early in their careers. But to be able to hire someone who's 23 or 24 years old, maybe it's their second job, and to know that you are shaping their career for the rest of their lives. I think back on those who gave me opportunities, and that's pretty profound. Yes, we're about getting the work done. We're pushing for comprehensive tax reform. We're pushing for workforce development to help companies fill the jobs that are out there so that South Carolina can be even more prosperous. Those things are what we're about, and they're important. But it's a more personal level to me now of identifying good, strong talent, figuring out ways to attract them to this organization, getting them up and running and turning them loose and letting them do their thing. That's a pretty exciting part of my job at this point in my career, and I'm very proud of the folks that we've been able to attract and to have as part of our team.
And I think that's a great example of how, as you mentioned, one of the challenges that South Carolina faces is how do we retain our talent? We have 6 universities here, and not a large percentage of them are staying after they graduate. So your actions set a great example for other business leaders to say, hey, I don't want to call it take a chance. I'm going to say, let's invest in our youth, and let's invest in that talent so that they stay here with us and not go off to other states. So thank you for setting that great example for us. As we come to a close, do you have any specific advice that you'd like to share with our audience?
Karen, just what we've said before, and you're a great example of it, that if you're not at the table, you're not at the table, and you're on the menu. And there is, South Carolina is a state in which the business community historically has played a strong and leading role in setting, I call it the civic agenda for our state. And as South Carolina grows, there are going to be an increasing number of voices who are also going to want and deserve a seat at the table, and that's important. But I do think it is a competitive advantage that South Carolina is pro-business, it is pro-employer, and yet we can't take that for granted. And the stronger we are as a unified voice over in the State House on a daily basis when the legislature is in session, through mechanics like a strategic plan that provide a blueprint for what we would like to see happen over the next 7 years between now and 2030. It's important that businesses do stay engaged, and not just at the state level, but certainly at the local level. You're active. Your listeners probably know you're as active, or maybe more so, with the Columbia Chamber of Commerce as you are with the South Carolina Chamber, and that's the way it should be. And I like to tell companies you need to join your local chamber first, and then join the South Carolina Chamber, and we'll figure out how to make that work. But it's the collective voice that we all represent that the Chamber of Commerce offers a vehicle for us to all come together and rally around those issues that are going to make all of us and make our state and the people of this state even better.
Thank you, Bob. I so appreciate you being here. Before we go, can you share with our listeners, how would they go about engaging with the state chamber? How do they contact you? What are the steps if they want to engage with the chamber?
Well, again, I would say join your local chamber first, and there are strong benefits to doing that. Call me, 803-465-5775. My email is very accessible, bob.morgan@schamber.net. Our website is very navigable. and you can download member benefits there. But always call me directly and or shoot me an email. And if you don't hear from me directly, you'll hear from someone on our team, and we'll be glad to talk to anybody about the benefits and invite them to be a part of this organization. Thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you. And again, you're such an advocate for, not, as you said, not just the state chamber, but for the local chambers. And we appreciate all you do for our state and our community. And again, audience, you see why I had him as a guest, because he has such a wide impact on our community. And I wanted you to hear firsthand some of the benefits of joining your local and your state chambers. So Bob, thank you again. I appreciate you being here. And to our audience, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Synergy Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast with Karen R. Jenkins. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, rate, review, and share our show. See you next time.